think we all got past one of those.
Yeah, I get that. All right, this was the duly noticed public hearing on the issue of the ban the box proposal. And I'd like to start the hearing for all of us to understand. I think there's maybe a little bit of disconnect on exactly how a person applies for a job with the Metropolitan government of Nashville. And I would like some member of the department to tell us that. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, sir. As far as the hiring process, all applicants for, at least on the civil service side, they go online to a system on Metro's website and apply online, complete an online application through the NeoGov. On that, they have to answer a series of questions, and one of those deals with conviction information. Once they do that, there are some, depending on the qualification of the jobs, what we call supplemental questions that each of the applicants have to respond to. And then once they complete that process, an analyst in human resources evaluates their education, their experience, and any other credentials such as certifications that's needed for the job and ranks those candidates. And then once that happens, that list of applicants is sent to the hiring department for review. If there's any questions with HR, we work in unison if there's any issues about qualifications. But usually that information is then, along with the what we call a preliminary list, is sent to the department. Now, once the department has that list of eligible candidates, and if there's open competitors that are ranked either outstanding, well qualified, or qualified, then that department determines which applicants they want to contact for interview. Now, the mandatories are those that are civil service employees and those that are veterans in that particular band that they must interview. Then it's up to the department to decide if any of those other candidates that they see that have scored in the highest category that they would like to interview. And that's the process for the entry-level or open competitive process.
Okay, and so everybody who wants to go to work for Metro has to fill out an online digital application.
For the civil service departments, yes. Now, for some non-civil service department, we also allow what we call courtesy announcements, but usually those applications go directly to that department. And there are some departments that may still use a paper application that is a form of the civil service application that we use, that they just choose to have a printed version. But in essence, it is the Metro Human Resources application that most departments use.
And no matter what department you're applying to work for, your digital online application goes first through HR, the Department of HR.
For all civil service departments, yes,
all
sir.
That's all I'm talking about.
Yes,
civil
sir.
service department.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
All right. So when that goes to HR, currently there's the box that we're talking about. Ask about the criminal history is on the online application, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And now when they if the box is checked, what happens then? You said there's some kind of ranking going on about qualified, well qualified.
Well, for all intents and purposes, let's go back to the box. If an applicant checks that they have some convictions, and there will be a part of the application where they explain that whatever that conviction was. The staff in HR does not evaluate that. The staff in HR evaluates the application primarily on the educational requirement and the other qualifications, like as I said, experience or certifications. Then once we forward the information over to the hiring department, there's the mandatories, which are the vets and the civil service, but then everyone else, the department can look and see who they wish to interview, and applications are forwarded on all of those applicants. So the hiring department is the one that would then take over the process process, which includes going through the application to see if there's any triggers that they might have concerns with.
So are you saying then that if the box is checked, it doesn't have any impact whatsoever on the rankings that's given to the applicant?
That's correct, sir.
No impact at all?
No impact at all, sir.
Okay. So if the box is checked and the person who checked the box that they do have a criminal record is either a veteran or a civil service employee, then they must be interviewed even if they have a criminal history?
That's correct, sir.
Does that always happen?
Sir, I mean, that's, this process has been in place a lot longer than I've been up there. I'm not sure.
Well, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know whether the department. And how do we? Does the HR department check to make sure that the veterans and the civil service employees actually get an interview?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Once on the back end of the process, each applicant that is a vet or civil service employee are identified. Now, the vets, they must have submitted a copy of their DD-214, which shows they've been honorably discharged. That's noted in our system, and so in the back end, when we have what's called the completed register, it identifies all the civil service employees and all the vets. On the back end, staff from HR ensures that each of those particular individuals have received an interview. If not, then a contact is made with that hiring department to advise them to that they must interview before we will submit the list. So there is a checks and balance on all the mandatory veterans and civil service employees.
Okay.
Mr. Commissioner, Chair, if I may, Mike's been on vacation, and I had a copy. Lou, you distributed a copy of the application, the digital application, to all the commissioners. Essentially, what would happen on the initial phase, questions 7 and 8, have you ever been convicted for a violation, et cetera, and then 8 is if yes, to the previous question, use this there to explain. Those questions would be omitted. However, at the end of the application, there is a digital signature that is required when you submit the application. And on part of that digital signature, the applicant on number 4 says, I authorize Metropolitan Nashville government or its representatives to investigate and verify any and all information contained in this employment application and to conduct a criminal background investigation, because you cannot be hired for Metro government without undergoing a criminal background. So the applicant is made aware that a background check will be made. It would simply be omitting questions 7 and 8 in the initial phase of the application process, with the exception of our public safety positions, police, fire, sheriff, ECC, and there are a few other positions in departments where that also would occur.
All right, I've got another point of clarification. The Sheriff's Department and the Emergency Communications and Police and Fire are going to know before the interview whether or not a person has a criminal background.
Yes, sir.
And everybody, before they can actually get a job with Metro, will undergo a criminal background check.
Correct. So that is a policy of this board for background checks, that every employee receives a thorough background check prior to starting employment with Metro.
Okay. Are there any other questions about the hiring process as it exists and as it's proposed by the department?
Yeah, I have a question about how it exists. I know we only deal with civil service, but do all employees, even non-civil service, have criminal background checks currently?
Again, ma'am, I can't speak on every department that's not within civil service, but I believe it is strongly supported by those other non-civil service departments, and we do receive information requests because that is another process that comes through HR. We do receive background reports from non-civil service department. I couldn't tell you that every single one does it because, again, we don't control their hiring, but any of those there's been many times when we have received information from some non-civil service departments.
Do you know that?
I would say that the majority of metro agencies conduct background checks on the employees they hire, and we facilitate that process for them. And as Mr. Taylor said, we can't say that every single one, but the vast majority of agencies do.
And at what stage of the application process?
Before they are hired.
After the interview?
When they
After
make the hire, like they may have 3 candidates that they've narrowed it down to. So they start out with a pool of 100. They get down to 3 candidates. Those 3 candidates are going to undergo a background check.
Okay. Now, at the last meeting, we discussed, we had a survey to department heads about their positions on this issue, and I think the only one that I recall that we were several just simply did not respond at all. And the one that did respond negatively, as I recall, was the water department. And has there been any discussion with Mr. Potter about his issues with the proposal?
Yeah, I spoke with Mr. Potter, and I believe he was going to send a representative to this meeting.
Is anybody here from the water department on behalf of Mr. Potter?
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Lyons.
I should have kept going. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
The water department's position is that they would still like to keep the don't ban the box. So that's our position at this particular time.
Is there a rationale that we're missing here as to why they need that? Or?
Well, there's some concern about certain positions in water that has something to do with public safety. Is the ones that the employees that are responsible for treating the water, things of that nature. So there's a lot of concern about that part, not necessarily about the ones who have to do manual labor or our entry-level labor position, things of that nature. So that's the biggest concern.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I guess next, does anyone here want to speak on behalf of the proposal?
Raise their hands.
Yeah. Who all is going to speak here? Who all is here to support the proposal to ban the box? Please raise your hand. All right. You got several. Anybody here against it other than Mr. Lyons?
The water department, for the record.
All right. All right. So who would like to speak in support of this?
Well, I'm not going to defend Mr. Lyons or the water department, but I will tell you that across the country, Homeland Security is there encouraging people to be certainly more aware of what's going on with the technology hacks and the other things that the public could be harmed by. So, you know, it's sort of across the board. If there's a particular department that wants to ignore the information or however they evaluate an employee or an applicant when they're getting ready to hire them, at least they have the information in front of them.
Right. No, I think we all share the concern.
All right, I just want to let you know, we have hired convicted employees, so it's not necessarily across the board. It's more or less what I've said earlier about the ones who are really treating the water and things, the jobs that is connected with the Homeland Security.
You know, thank you, Mr. Lyons. Mr. Taylor, do we know how many current Metro employees in civil service positions have criminal records?
So I'm not sure that we have a database on that. Now, I can give you information from my experience as the HR manager for Public Works for the past 3 years before I returned to HR. And in that, we hired a number of individuals who had blemishes on their records. And we found them to be dedicated employees, hardworking employees. And I believe Mr. Charles Bodie, who was my successor in the position, is here also. But at least from what I understand, what I know from these individuals that we've hired at Public Works, they've been great employees. Again, you look at more of a labor-intensive position, but again, that's a decision that we decided to make, and we do get, well, when I was there, I got the background checks, and we had a conversation with the employees. And like I said, for the most part, all those that had a blemish worked out very well and are still at Public Works from those that was hired under my tenure there.
Question. On the convictions, does that include DUIs?
It's any conviction.
Any conviction?
Yes, ma'am. Other than minor traffic offenses. But DUIs are
Oh, that's part of the conviction?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, that falls in the, okay.
Right. Okay, now who would like to speak on behalf of Ban the Box? Come forward, please. Yes, ma'am. If y'all could just all sit on the front row, those of you who wish to speak, and we'll call you up one at a time. And go ahead, ma'am, you can sit down. And make sure the little red ring on your microphone is lit, and identify yourself for the record.
Good morning. My name is Jackie Sims, and I am a member of Democracy Nashville. I work for a local nonprofit that does reentry as a contract employee, Project Return, and I'll just hop right into it.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank each of you for allowing us to come back again. It gives us great hope that you recognize our commitment to the Ban the Box issue. And we want everyone to understand that none of us are opposed to background checks. We believe that background checks are necessary. Our primary concern is the checking of the box may cause some treatment, which may be, we're human and we make mistakes, and it may be somewhat prejudicial on a potential employee that's looking at an applicant. So we just want those who have felonies on their records to have ample opportunity to get before an employee and talk about their qualifications and even talk about their felony record. We think that is important. So removing the checking of the box, to me, to each of us who are here, just allows for greater opportunity for those who are affected to come before an employer and give them the greater possibility, if they're qualified, to receive a job. I also want to make you aware that I have documents for each of you. We have a list of, an extensive list of persons who are supportive of banning the box, including our new mayor, Megan Berry, Metropolitan Council at Large. We have Metro Council Lady Erica Gilmore, Brenda Gilmore, Gloria Sweetlove, who is president of the state NAACP. It's a very extensive list, and we would like you to have the opportunity to take a look at that so you can see the support that we've garnished as we've worked on this campaign. So I can leave them here or bring them to you, and that's all I have to say.
Well, while you're there, let me say that I think we all understand the issue and share the feeling of support that you have. It's like everything else. The devil's kind of in the details, you
Yes.
know. And I was trying to understand in discussing with Mr. Taylor earlier how this application process takes place. Apparently, it doesn't make any difference if you check the box, at least to get in the door. Now, the department head who does the interviewing for the actual positions, you know, they obviously would see what's on
Yes.
the box. So we already have in play a supplemental part of the application, as I understand it, where a person can explain whatever they like in terms of their record and so forth. And so if we simply suppose rather than ban the box, we just leave it blank if you want to. Would that work? You don't have to answer that question. and
The
then-
box
then
would
you-
still be there, but it's not required that you check it?
Right.
Is that what you're asking?
What would that do?
Would someone else want to?
It would still deter people from applying.
It would intimidate a lot of
Be intimidating, someone said? All right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Would you like for me to leave
Sure.
this here or bring
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, I get a brand. I used to be a court officer.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Showing off.
I can't even go back.
Who were you a court officer for? Who were you?
Judge Leon Rule.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He was the honorable, yeah. Who's next? Yes, sir.
Good morning, Commission. My name is Stephen Handy. I'm pastor of McKendree United Methodist Church in downtown Nashville, a community that speaks and stands with our brothers and sisters who are ex-offenders as we attempt to build bridges of hope for the Nashville community. We've been practicing restorative justice for the last 2 decades by taking our facility not only for worship on Sunday morning and Wednesday Bible study, but we leveraged our building to help our young brothers and sisters and those who are looking for restorative dignity in our community. And so we use our facility as a transitional housing facility for up to 8 men, 365 days a year with job training, job placement, coaching, personal financing. And we're finding that many of our people go back in the community who are trying to apply for jobs. When they try to go through government, there's an intimidation of this box that's creating some havoc for them. And so we've joined forces with faith-based organizations, quite a few in the Nashville community, because we believe our participation in banning the box is not only critical but also necessary for institutional equity to become a reality for ex-offenders. And so we join with our brothers and sisters from all over this city, Baptists and Methodists, Church of Christ and Disciples of Christ, many of our Jewish and Muslim congregations, to stand not only in the gap for them, but to stand alongside of them. We live in a city where homelessness is becoming more rampant. Transitional housing is becoming less and less, and many are being affected by this thing we call the box. It represents employment discrimination. Whether we believe it or not, in the eyes of many, it does. So ban the box policy for those individuals would not only give them a sense of moving forward, but possibly long-term employment and becoming productive citizens, and less of a perceived burden or an eyesore in this city. So we pray that Metropolitan, Nashville Civic Service Commission, and the Human Resource Department will adopt the ban the box policy. We hope in the spirit of justice, the ban the box becomes Nashville's new normal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Damian Durr. I serve as the youth and young adult pastor at the Temple Church, and I also serve as a consultant for the Children's Defense Fund Nashville team aimed at dismantling the cradle-to-prison pipeline. And just echoing the sentiments that have already been shared, my work has centered, and I just came out of Metro Nashville Public Schools at Pearl Cone Entertainment Magnet High School, where I served as a social and emotional specialist, primarily working with African-American young men, 9th through 12th grade. And so my experience with the box, obviously young men whose fathers, uncles, brothers have been impacted by the criminal justice system and have found themselves obviously displaced and suffering kind of a social death as a result of what the box represented in light of what their past represented. And so I've seen the effects just in terms of not having the opportunity economically impact families, but also seeing the effects on young boys and young men of color and young ladies as well. And so I stand with Democracy Nashville and others in the faith community, as well as those who are community organizers, as well as those in our government that have made it clear that they think that this represents an opportunity for this city, as it is in its city, to continue in being about justice and to put ourselves, I think, in a position to more thoroughly be equitable to those in our city, particularly as we look at the amount of jobs that are in our city. I think NPR shared a report earlier this year that the city of Nashville has filed for over 11,000 1,000 building permits in the last year and a half, totaling over $2 billion. So that's obviously a lot of jobs and a lot of opportunity. And there are many who possibly can't take advantage of those jobs or possibly will not be considered for those jobs just as a result of what that box means. So I just stand in solidarity with all of those who are seeking to continue to push our city towards being a city that's an IT city, not just because of our economic growth, but a city that considers the significance of all of their inhabitants and all of their citizens. And I'll do what I can continuously to try to bring this issue before many so that we can ultimately bring about a positive resolution for all those who are here.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you.
My name's Betty Kirkland. I am Executive Director of Project Return. Project Return is a 36-year-old Nashville nonprofit solely dedicated to the futures of the people who are coming out of prison and coming back to our community. We serve hundreds every year. About 500 will come through our program this year alone. These are men and women who are destitute, they are recently released, and they are determined. Unlike many things where they're correctionally mandated, they cross our threshold of their own volition. They choose to come to us because they recognize their primary step to their good future is employment, and that's our primary focus as well. Against the odds, more than 8 out of 10 of them are getting employment as they come through our program. We focus on, at one level, job readiness and how they can be good employees and great employees, and at another level, we focus on how they convey that to prospective employers. They are, however, being boxed out by the box. They don't get the opportunity to convey that, to convey themselves to employers. And so we really urge Metro to take the steps, as so many other cities already have, not only for the step itself, but for the example it sets for everyone in our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, Commissioners. My name is Daniel Horowitz. I'm an attorney here in Nashville. Every week, hundreds of people walk out of a Nashville prison or jail with nothing but the shirts on their back and a criminal record. After they are released, however, the primary question that we have to answer as a city is whether or not we want them to succeed. If we're serious about reducing recidivism, we should. I get a call almost every day from someone who is struggling to find employment due to the stigma of his or her criminal record. It's effectively become a life sentence. Additionally, throughout Tennessee, many individuals who are seeking employment are actually eligible to have their criminal records expunged, and thus would legally be entitled to state that they have never been arrested or convicted of a crime, except for the fact that they can't afford to pay the mandatory expungement fee. This is a tremendous problem, and it's one that needs to be solved.
I think you're working on that on another front, aren't you, Mr. Horowitz?
Yes, sir.
Good luck. We appreciate your efforts on that behalf.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The box alone is a deterrent and an obstacle to employment. If it were meaningless, you would not have a Metro department opposing this initiative. Banning the box represents one small step towards solving this problem and increasing employment rates for ex-offenders. Due to questions about criminal history that are included on most job applications, however, a persistent problem for the nearly 70 million Americans who have been arrested at some point in their lives, even for minor offenses and even for things that happened long ago, is that the resumes are frequently tossed in the trash before they have a meaningful opportunity to explain what happened. This proposal merely ensures that people who have had an interaction with the criminal justice system are afforded that opportunity to explain what transpired rather than being disqualified immediately. Of note, Durham, North Carolina's recent experience with an initiative very similar to the one before you today proves unmistakably that ban-the-box policies help people with criminal records secure good jobs while simultaneously helping employers hire good workers. In fact, the evidence that such policies provide a measurable benefit to the overall economy is so strong that more than 100 jurisdictions have already implemented far more ambitious proposals than this one. As major companies like Walmart, Target, Koch Industries, and myriad other employers realized long ago, the simple reality is that people with criminal records make for some of the hardest working, honest, and loyal employees around because maintaining gainful employment is essential to remaining out of prison. I strongly encourage you to implement the ban-the-box proposal under consideration, and I sincerely hope that you will. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horowitz.
Didn't a group of prisoners just leave the Harvard today?
Yes, they did.
So
I hadn't heard that.
Without access to internet, solely using paper books.
See, that's the thing about this digital inclusion. We got to keep pushing.
I agree. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Pat Halper, and I am a member of Nashville Organized for Action and Hope, otherwise known as NOAA, and I am part of the Criminal Justice Task Force. I'm here today to support the adoption of ban the box policy on these Metro government employee applications. For all of the reasons stated in the Fair Chance Hiring Policy proposal, this is good policy for those who have made amends to society by serving their time, as well as for our city and its citizens. Ban the box policy can provide opportunities and pathways out of poverty for low-income residents. Nashville needs to have smarter policies that focus our resources to help reduce recidivism rather than feeding into a cycle of incarceration. Employment is essential to rehabilitation and re-entry into the community. By banning the box, communities are recognizing the need to help previously incarcerated persons with the resources and opportunities to gain employment and therefore reintegrate into society. A ban the box policy reaffirms Nashville's commitment to equal opportunity and gives Nashville a competitive advantage in the 21st century. At least 100 cities have banned the box, including Philadelphia, Detroit, Cincinnati, New Haven, Boston, Jacksonville, Memphis, Durham, San Francisco, and Kalamazoo, Michigan. In my faith tradition, which brings me to the work of NOAA, we are taught that it is morally wrong to place an obstacle in front of a blind person, making their walk more difficult and dangerous. Following this metaphor, when we make it difficult for people to rightfully re-enter society, we are, in essence, placing an unnecessary obstacle in their path, creating more difficulty for them to do well in life. My hope is that this policy will be adopted by Metro, and it will become an example for other businesses to take up this policy as well. It will make Nashville a better and safer city for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Anaya Wiley, and unfortunately, I do have a conviction on my record. And me, as a mother, I have 2 children, and banning the box would actually promote a better monopoly for Nashville. Because us, with those convictions, we have more to prove. And thus, therefore, having more to prove, it makes us harder workers. I have had a hard time finding stable employment, that which would be conducive to providing a better life for my children versus what I've had for myself. And the box being on the application, it deters me and others with convictions from further applying for many jobs that are out there. Now, there are jobs that are out there that are more manual, but not sustaining. Me being a mother, primarily a caregiver, it's hard for me to provide. It is extremely hard for me to provide because I cannot find that job because of my quote-unquote history. And I think this would be very helpful for us and for Nashville alone.
Thank you.
And that is all I have to say.
Thank you for being here this morning.
Good morning. Andrea Flores. Just a point of clarification about the box in the evaluation process through HR. We understand that it's not used to determine how qualified an individual is before it's then passed along to the hiring department. But at that point, if the hiring department sees that box checked and an explanation provided or not provided, there is already a certain stigma that sits with the applicant, whether it's intentional or non-intentional. And so I think it's very important to understand that that applicant will be judged based on that. Now, if I understand the process, it's once the hiring department goes through the qualifications and then decides to extend interviews, at that point, a background check is made, and the applicant would be able to have a conversation with the hiring department about whatever may be present. So I think the order of operations is very important, and I think it is relevant, and we know from people who are directly affected that the box does indeed matter.
Can you tell us what you do?
I'm with Democracy Nashville.
Thank you.
Good morning. Andrew Crinks with Democracy Nashville. Just a few final words to reinforce some of the things that we heard from some of our speakers here from the community. And one is that, as Andrea just mentioned, I think it's important to recognize that while it may be the case that the checked box on applications for Metro jobs isn't a factor on the front end in terms of a ranking system, I'm not sure that it would be the case that everyone who applies for a job is guaranteed an interview. I may be wrong on that, but I think that oftentimes the box serves as a deterrent in the first place also to people for applying. As Ms. Wiley just said, if you know that the box is going to be there, you know that a potential employer is potentially going to make a predetermined judgment based on that checkbox. And so even if it is there, it still has a power over potential applicants, and it would possibly sway people from even applying in the first place. And I just want to note finally that the more than 100 cities who have adopted this in 18 states have adopted a ban the box policy where they've removed the box. These 100 cities have not simply left it so that people had a choice to check it or not, but they have gone ahead. Republican and Democrat governors and mayors and others have put this into place. So just want to reinforce and clarify some of those points. And I want to thank you again for the time and energy you've spent to listen to us and to provide space for us to come and to bring this before you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak in favor of the ban the box? All right, is there anyone here to speak opposed to ban the box? Okay. If the commission would like to discuss, we can simply pass this for a vote. We can't vote today because of the rules. Right, Ms.
Yes, the way this was noticed, the hearing was to come after the agenda item, so it'll need to be deferred. The voting will need to take place next month. Okay. All right. Any discussion? Does everybody understand this? We're bound by due process. We can't vote at the same time of the public hearing. Does anybody have anything they want to say, Ms. Sanders or Commissioner?
I think it's important for us to take this move to ban the box. I agree with the persons who have come forth in favor of banning it. I think certainly it is important for people to be able to have the ability to gain employment. And even though people often say, well, I didn't look at that, people are human, and if they have, several applicants and they're trying to decide between many qualified applicants which ones to discard, I think it could provide a disadvantage. And I think, just having an explanation on the application is not sufficient. It's really important to have that explanation given in a face-to-face situation where you can actually see a person's demeanor and evaluate it in a situation where they actually have an opportunity to answer questions about their history. And certainly when people have been incarcerated, they have supposedly paid their debt to society, but we tend to make them to continue to pay for that debt.
Why is that? Because of the liabilities out there. Such a litigious society. Everybody's concerned about overlooking those criminal records. But one of the things that sort of makes this really a simple decision is we're not really changing any policies. We're just postponing the question until people actually have a face-to-face interview. And if this truly is an obstacle to getting people in the door for an interview, and we have no evidence that it is, but if it is, then what's the harm in just moving the question to the supplemental application? And if that's the case, we can just do that as a directive to HR and have it changed. But the other side of that is that going to apply to the safety departments as well? So you're going to have two initial applications. You're going to have one for the departments that want it on the initial application, and then everybody else where it's only going to be on the supplemental application. Is that right?
I'll speak. I think for our public safety positions, police, fire, ECC, sheriff's department, that's going to be, they have to respond to supplemental questions currently. So that question would simply be part of their supplemental responses. On the other agency-wide questions, it would just simply be a matter of removing numbers 7 and 8, which is not an administrative cost to us to remove those, and they would go on a supplemental question. As long as we keep that digital signature that includes that you're stating all information you provided is correct, and that you realize you will be subject to a background check before you are hired. So, and I was going to say, there's not any sort of remotely significant administrative cost for HR to do this, to remove questions 7 and 8. And if you wanted to do it for a year and come back and report back to you, we could do something like that. I'm just tossing things out for you all for your consideration.
Ms. North?
Mr. Taylor, on a lot of our non-civil service departments, some of those are your constitutional officers, for example, your elected officials.
Yes, ma'am.
Will they have the same application as the civil service employees?
Well, let's say that this questionnaire is removed from our applications, then it would probably be possible for us to print the online application and encourage those constitutional or elected offices to utilize that application. And again, we have HR coordinators meetings in which we invite every HR coordinator in Metro, whether you're civil service or non-civil service. And this is something that we're willing to communicate with the departments, explain the process. And again, most of those still conduct a background check. So it would be an education, and we could print out those who don't currently use our online system. We have, paper applications, or if they would like to start using our online, we're willing to expand that also.
Well, I think I would suggest that we consider having all of Metro except the public safety have the same application. It's sort of my suggestion, whether it's online or paper. If you're going to ban the box, ought to do it on all of them. So it's that's my suggestion. I see, you hear the slippery slope in a negative way. I see this as a positive slippery slope. If you've got people employed, you're not going to be having on the front page of the Tennessean about the homeless city, no place to go, because it looks like to me it will cut down on our homeless population. And maybe that's just a pipe dream, but it certainly seems logical in that regard. I think you're going to see, we have a lot in Nashville Metro Public Schools, we have a lot of homeless children. And that just tears me up. And they come to school, they've got the burden. First of all, they have the burden of not wanting any of their peers to know they're homeless. A lot of them have the burden of being hungry. It just seems like so many good things could happen from this. Whether it does or doesn't, I'm not sure. That's just, no one will know. But it looks like if we can employ more individuals and improve our homeless situation and our homeless children, I see the potential for a lot of good coming out of this. And
I just had a question I wanted to clarify. We were given the scenario of how hiring is done. When the list is sent to the department, the department decides who they want to interview. At what point do they ask about the criminal background? Is it actually in the interview, they ask a question, or does the applicant actually write it down somewhere?
If they receive the application as it is right now, which when they can go online and look at them, or they can be printed off, they will see if they have someone who meets the qualifications for that position who has been convicted. That hiring agent will see that. Like if we have 300 applications, 25 are in the top, are in the outstanding list. The hiring agency, whether, let's say it's Public Works, they can see in those top 25 that 2 of those people have a conviction.
Well, in the what's being
and they
proposed,
can choose to interview them or not interview them.
Well, I guess in what's being proposed, when would they get that information is what I'm really asking.
Well, they would get that information if that person made the interview list. If they decided to that was one of the individuals they were going to interview, and I would hope that during that interview, the individual would let the department who's interviewing them at the agency level know that they have a conviction, because if they got a background check and it came back they had a conviction, it wouldn't have been they were very candid and forthright in their interview. So I would assume that during the interview process, the candidate would let the hiring agent know.
Well, I guess my question is does the applicant at that point, after they've been invited for an interview, does the department know at the time they invite them for an interview under this proposal, or would it be after they're invited for an interview?
It would be after they're invited for an interview.
Okay. And then I guess the other question is, I think the onus should be on the department to ask the applicant as opposed to the applicant to volunteer that information, because, why would you volunteer something negative about yourself if it's not related to the job qualifications?
Well,
there's going to be a criminal background check.
I understand that, but we've had instances where people have not been very forthright, and then you find out after the fact, and that's a bit challenging.
So basically, you're saying the interviewer would not know at all in the interview unless the applicant brought it up.
Or they asked them, or the interviewer asked them.
Okay, but the interview wouldn't ask everybody. They would just ask some people. They wouldn't be required to ask everybody.
That may be the first question. That may be the first question for everybody. Have you ever been convicted?
Well, we would strongly encourage and recommend that if you ask of one, you ask of all.
Yes.
All right, I think we're done with the questions. We're just going to remember, did you have any closing comments? Because I'd like to wrap this up. Any other closing comments from anyone? Well, I personally would like to chip in a little bit here. Of all the commissioners, I probably had the most exposure to the criminal justice system. I was an assistant United States attorney for 4 years here in Nashville, and then I was the first federal public defender here for 7 years. So I spent the first 11 years of my legal career right smack in the middle of the criminal justice system on both sides. I'm very keenly aware of what a conviction does to a person's future. It basically destroys it. And I also am very keenly aware of the war on drugs, the sentencing guidelines that have resulted in this country being having the most people incarcerated than any country in the world per capita. which is absurd, but that's where we are. I hear and believe in my heart, even though there's no statistical way to figure this out, that a person who has the opportunity to get a job with a conviction will be an outstanding employee. I also see and share with Ms. North the two sides of Nashville that we have. We were booming its city with all the money and development, and I can see 14 cranes from my office window right now. And I grew up in East Nashville. I spent some time in the projects when I was a child. And there is another side of the city, and there's a lot of folks out there that are hurting. And there's not a whole lot we can do on this commission politically. Obviously, we're nothing we can do politically. I think y'all have tried the politics of this. Although I am impressed with the list of endorsements. We just had a countywide election. And Megan Berry, Bill Freeman, Howard Gentry, Charles Robert Bone, Linda Reprovic, all mayoral candidates endorsed this proposal to ban the box. They have been out talking to people, listening to their stories, understanding the other half of Nashville, and they get it. They get it. Also in the council, Erica Gilmore, John Cooper, Bob Mendez, all councilmen at large, worked very hard to win those elections. They too listened to the other side of Nashville. And I, for one, am listening. I have been listening, and maybe we have an opportunity to do this. We can't do it today, but we'll see next month. Thank you all for being here. We very much appreciate your efforts. Hopefully this will result in something good. Is there any further business to come before this special called public hearing? Hearing none, we're adjourned.